Patriots to make it 28-3. Arthur Blank loving it. Up by 25. Toss to White. He's in. What a comeback.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the 28-3 podcast. We're coming back to you after a victory, one that at least 2 out of 3 of us did not predict, and I think a lot of Saints fans did not predict, even as bad as the Patriots had been. But I think we found out just how bad the Patriots were when we played them this week. But I'm not taking anything away. A win's a win. It felt great. Got the shutout after probably more negativity going into a game than I'd seen in a long time. This was much needed, in my opinion. What you got on this, Nick?
I mean, I agree. I hesitantly picked the Saints to win this one.
That's why I go to you first. You were the one of faith in this one.
It was with the least amount of confidence possible. But I think there's been a lot of chatter about how, talking on the socials about how motion and play action and all these things improve the offense. I'm not as optimistic on that, on what happened this weekend. We ended up right around 300 yards. I think the difference was we finished drives and we took advantage of all the opportunities that came from the defense playing so well. I still think we have a long way to go on offense if we're going to be an explosive type of offense. But with that being said, if we can execute like that with the opportunities that we have, maybe it's the right offense for this team with a defense that once again looked like a top 5 defense. Last week was hopefully an anomaly. Adebo back made a big contribution this week. It looked different. I don't know why. I can't point to certain plays where he did certain things, but the defense looked impossible to deal with. With that said, that's a bad offense, so maybe we don't want to read too much into it. I mean, they're one of the bottom 5 offenses in the league, so I don't want to get too hyped about it, but I mean, you can't be disappointed. That was probably the best performance of any team in the NFL this week. Yeah,
I'm going to set up Max here because there was something he said a few times while we were watching the game, and I'm not saying it's a bad take. I mean, it certainly
would be a bad take for you to say I have
Max
a bad take.
So that is true. Facts. I just learned what the fax machine emoji was thanks to our Discord. Anyway, Max kept saying that Paulson and Debo unlocks this defense. So
I think Max. Nick touched on it. One of the first things he said, having a Debo back changes everything because all of a sudden Yadam, instead of being your number 2, basically, he slides all the way down to your number 4, and he's really not even on the field for the most part unless it's dime defense. You have, let's be honest, Adebo has all the promise in the world. He, after Lattimore, I mean, I guess you got to say Alante's got the next most talent as far as pure talent for the corners, but Adebo's right up there with him. If he doesn't sit out his last year at Stanford for COVID, he probably is a first-round pick. So we managed to get him later than that, and he's loaded with talent. And him being back, man, I mean, he's a viable starting cornerback in this league. Nick and I had a talk this morning. We were talking about, if for whatever reason this season goes a little off the rails and Carr doesn't improve and you start to look to the draft about getting a new quarterback and all that, and you're looking at trade pieces, we both said if you're going that route, Lattimore would be the guy you probably trade to get some value because you would still have Alante Taylor and Paulson Adebo there as good starting cornerbacks in the NFL. Like, Adebo's good, man. Everyone wrote him off at the beginning of the preseason training camp talking about, Alante's got it locked up. He's going to be the number 2. And shout out to Garland for calling it out in the pod we did with him where he said, don't sleep on Adebo. He's like, right now, he's like, I think Adebo is the guy.
Yeah.
And he's the only local media guy that I can think of that had that take. Everybody.
Well, to be fair, I think I don't know if all three of us talked about it, but you and I talked about it, Max. Adebo was dinged up most of last year. And people are forgetting very quickly how good his rookie year was. If he just made a small step, he becomes a top tier corner. And I think this year we've seen it, other than, the missed games and the injuries, with him, Alante, and Adebo, and now Yadam stepping up. It's really hard to see many secondaries that are better.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'll take it a step further and say I think the Saints have the best cornerback room in the NFL. And we talked about it in the preseason episodes leading up to the season opener, saying, the Saints have probably the strongest defensive back room. But I think over the first 5 weeks of the season, they've shown they definitively have the strongest cornerback room. You go 4 deep. Like we can talk about Yadam and how he's not as good as Adebo when he played, and he gave up a couple of penalties and all that in the Packers game. But the reality is that dude was good and way better than anyone expected for the majority of the time that he's had to play. For your fourth best corner, that's incredible. Fantastic. So,
well, my whole thing is not whole thing, but your room is good when we drag PFF through the mud a lot, except when they say what we want them to say. But when they take that group and don't even have to post their grades, they just post how many pass defense they have, period, and they're top 3, top 4 in the league. It's like they're PFF proof. Like you could just tell, and just the sheer stats, the raw numbers, even those add up.
I think I saw earlier that we have as many interceptions already through 4 or 5 games as we did last season.
Yeah, and that's something, I think when we talked to Roman, something he said, why he thought his defenses were better than this defense, and that this defense is incredible, but they took the ball away. Well, we're taking the ball away, and we're, 4th in total defense, 8th against the run, 4th against the pass, top 5 in third down, red zone, everything across the board. If they're turning the ball over, it's an absolutely scary
I agree
defense.
with that. And look, the defense, if they stay healthy, and I say I'm particularly focused on Lattimore and Adebo in this scenario. If those two stay healthy and you can keep Alante playing the slot, Yadam as a 4, you got the Honey Badger running around. May is due back to come back from the suspension, I think this week, right? He should be back. It's either this week or next week. Marcus May will be back, which only makes you stronger.
It was only 4 game.
I think he's got one more.
It was only 3, I believe, for the suspension. Correct. Yeah.
Oh, was it 3? Okay. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
I think
he's back next week. Okay.
I think he's either back this week or next week. And Jordan Howden played very well this week, and we talked about him in the preseason as being that sleeper guy, because if Dennis Allen knows one thing, it's defensive backs. And there's a proven track record of the Saints front office finding these guys in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th round that are going to be, almost immediate contributors. And we're seeing that with Howden. Howden's already stepped into a pivotal role with May's suspension, and he performed well. We all remarked about how well he played on Sunday. So,
yeah, he had himself a
and look, the defensive backs, that is the strong suit of this defense. It's not even in question. It's loaded. It really is. And, the rest of the defense, there's a few holes here and there. But the defensitive backs, not many. It's just you're looking at age in a certain spot.
If Granderson and Cam play like they did this week,
Granderson in particular, he was lights out this week.
They looked great.
Yeah.
He was everywhere.
He played up to that contract this week.
Yeah. I don't want to bury the lead, but I think we kind of buried the lead. How about the offense? Got some points. Look, I'm excited. I'm not saying it's fixed.
It's not.
But let's start with this part of it. Okay. We debated this in our group text, and a lot of people, I think, thought it fun to say #bullying works. And, Greg Rosenthal was on NFL saying, wow, it's hilarious that the New Orleans fan base and New Orleans Saints media have hammered Carmichael so much to where he's actually changed his game plan. That was the message going around throughout the whole day, is that the Saints changed up what they're doing. They added in a little bit more motion, a little bit more play action, and it was all thanks to us.
And Corey, that's what they were saying, right? Do you believe that was the case?
I mean, on A to B, like linearly, straight up, no.
I'm only asking because you sent a text to our group saying exactly what I felt is that we're still not running motion. We're still like it looked
I'll say this
to me similar.
They were running.
I
motion,
noticed. Well, let me say this. I was charting. Well, not actually charting, but like I was paying close attention. There were two things I was looking for in the first drive: motion before the snap and play action.
And we saw both.
Neither of those things happened. No,
the first drive, no. The first drive, no. But in the game, yes.
No one went in motion the entire first drive, and there was one play which was odd. It was like Carr didn't go into a quarterback drop. He turned like he was going to hand off, but he never actually did a fake handoff. I'm like, can you even call that a play? I was like, what did he just do? It looked like a play action, like he reversed out, but his arms never went to actually fake it to anybody. I'm like, what was the point of that? But so maybe that might count as a play action. But if it's like if you ran a 0.5 play action on the first drive, I don't think that tells you that Carmichael really gave a shit what people were saying. I'm not saying that that's not good. I would hope he felt some pressure or just pressure from his own damn self to get better. But I mean, but it wasn't a drastic change.
I didn't think so either. And I think the numbers came out. It was 3 play actions the whole game, which is 4%, which is basically what we're doing. Motion was a little bit up. It was 14, 20%. And I'm not saying that means anything. It doesn't. This time we executed when we had the chance. And to me, that was the difference. It was, looking at offense, how many plays were true negative plays where we could have done better? A couple penalties, the Olave drop at the goal line, maybe. Yeah. And then maybe the Carr throw that he shouldn't have thrown that put the ball at risk on that 1 third down.
The one that he's good for one a game on?
One a game, yeah, unfortunately. I mean, we can't say he doesn't. He does it once a game. So, but overall, I feel it was a very conservative approach, but when your defense is dominating like that, why would you put the ball at risk a whole lot? I don't.
And see, Nick, we were doing so well, during the game, and then and just now. But I think with Nick and I, it's always like we're good, and then there's some fork in the road that hits, right? And so for me, I'm like, yeah, it's okay to stick to what works, but at the same time, we saw what the overly conservative approach is. You can't, I think we said it in the third quarter, like it's too early just to park the car. I don't think we have the luxury of parking the car, just going run the clock out. Now look, it technically worked in this one. Okay. And we were playing a really bad team, but
we also threw deep ball that should have been caught. I don't think we completely parked it, but we were very careful about it. This game,
and I know what Corey's talking about because I remember the exchange, and because I want to say I said something to the effect of like we can't go this whole game just going run, pass, punt, and having these 45-second drives, and then I followed it up with, well, maybe we can in this game because this team is absolute trash, but.
Right. Yeah. And that's my point. Right.
Well, exactly. I think what I said that I think what you latched on there to, Max, was that I said, this is exactly how you let bad teams.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where you and I were in agreement on it. It's that it's not it's not a recipe for success against most teams. Now, this week, look, the Patriots are just fucking just headed, like they're on a rocket ship towards a top 5 pick. Like, this team is bad. Yeah. And Belichick's headed towards the unemployment line.
I think you got to make them score on you once before you worry too much. So they're very bad.
They're really bad.
I mean, come on, we're Saints fans, so we're technically always worried, but I get what you're saying.
That's the worst team we played, and honestly, I think if they play the Bears right now, the Bears probably roll up 21 points on them easy.
Well, I mean, after what the Bears did
the last 2 weeks, the Bears have put up points. Granted, one of the weeks was against the toothless Broncos, who, I just read a little article about how there's word going around that they're about to go do a little fire sale and start selling off assets like they're going out of fucking business. So, yeah.
They should.
I saw a headline to that effect.
Which look, that trade, the Peyton trade is about to look fucking fantastic. Where you get,
I mean, it's for sure we're getting a top 40
pretty much.
pick now,
I mean, unless
right?
something turns around drastically, you're looking at Brian Brees, which is probably the best defensive first round pick since Lattimore, easy. You know what I mean? And it's the best defensive line pick we've made in, my God, maybe since Cam Jordan in the first round.
Recently, we've had a lot of. I mean,
no.
Pick,
first round. Yeah.
Oh, first round. Okay.
So yeah, and it's like Brees looks special, and there was a whole bunch of talk about how much he was double teamed in this game. He's already what Nick and I said he was going to be, in that he is the guy on the defensive line. Like, it's indisputable at this point. Like, he's making it go. You know, Granderson's probably your second best guy right now, and then Cam. But Brees, lest there be no confusion, is the guy at the interior defensive line.
Yeah, we talked earlier, in our season preview pod about Shepard and Saunders, and look, those guys still have their very definitive roles. And in terms of
I'm not worried about snap count. I'm talking about just impact.
That's what I'm saying. Like, because they might be on the field just as much, but the one to your point, Max, who stands out is Brees. I mean, he's just, and I think you hear a little bit from coaches, because this was my concern about him being a rookie, and it's a concern with like a lot of rookies who have as much talent as him, is that they start to lose track of like fundamentals. They start to not worry about learning the nuances of being an NFL defensive tackle, because they're just so damn gifted and physically talented that they can push through it.
I mean, I go back to what I said about Brees back in April before we even picked him, and saying that this kid was literally the best player on a loaded Clemson team his freshman year. Like, talent.
Yeah, in the national championship.
Like, this kid for that whole season, Roman touched on that. Like, this kid is special talent-wise, and he seems to have the mental makeup to push it even further in the pros. So, look, we struck gold with him, and if you can pair that up with a top 40 pick this year, I mean, Jesus Christ, that trade is just, it's highway robbery at that point. So, hold on. I'm looking at this right here. Really, so, this was Jeff Nowak. I forget who he reports for, and Underhill retweeted it. Dennis Allen said part of what caused some of the pre-snap penalties this week was the incorporation of more motion into the offense. Our guys have to get to it. This is a quote. Our guys have to get used to it. If we're going to do these things, we have to be able to execute them at a high level. So there absolutely was more motion this week.
There was more. It wasn't a lot, and none of the big plays came off the motion. Most of the negative plays came off the motion.
But it shows you how much Nick and I have gone back and forth about it shows you how much Nick and I have gone back and forth about motion and Carmichael, when the first thing that came into my head when I read that quote was like, Nick's going to be like, you can't do motion because it causes him to jump off. But I know you didn't actually think that, Nick, but I
don't think motion's bad, but if Carmichael's not good at implementing motion, why would we want to force him to do motion?
Because he's got to learn. You got to teach that old dog.
Maybe that's true. But if it's going to be to the detriment of us because it's not in whatever scheme he's doing, then
but here we are back.
It didn't do anything for us, is what I'm saying this week. It's something that probably needs to be worked on for multiple weeks to get everyone accustomed to the change. I don't think they scrap it because we had a few penalties on it. Of course not. But and he should always be trying to innovate. That's what OC positions are in the NFL now. It's constantly trying to get an edge and change things and
in
be
theory.
And in all fairness, he hasn't been right. He's very much stuck 10 years ago. We all know that. With a top 5 defense, if we have an offense that doesn't turn the ball over, are we going to be a competitive team all year? I think so. Would I prefer to see him get a little more innovative and try and get big leads so our defense can really tee off on people? Absolutely. Of course. We all want to see that.
It was interesting to me watching it. It was kind of like it was like a dipping his toe in the water kind of thing with the.
That's exactly what it was. That's a great way to put it. It was like dipping the toes this week.
Yeah, because there were some drives where you were just like, this is last year. Like there was no motion. It was a run, pass, punt. And then there was other drives where you're like, that was different. And then the one that got capped off with the Foster Moreau shuffle pass, you're just like, never seen us run that shit. I mean, maybe kind of with Taysom a little bit, like not that specifically. And that's just one small example. But like, so some drives you're like, okay, great, that's new, that's awesome, that looks really good. Or we're plowing the way for Kamara, or Kendre is looking great. And then there was other drives where you're just like, it's like we just got on the field.
Yeah, and you know what, though? I'm glad you touched on the Foster Moreau touchdown. That, to me, was the most exciting play of the game, just from a we have not seen that standpoint. And we ran it, and I just remember I just was like, holy shit, that's fantastic. Like, that was a very – that was a creative, that was a cool, that was a great play that we have not seen them do in forever.
My favorite play was seeing Michael Thomas in the middle of the field.
Yes.
And catching that 20-something yarder, because that's where he dominated.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Why aren't we doing more in the middle of the field?
Where are the slants? Where the fuck are the slants? I swear to God, I haven't seen any this year.
I agree, but if you do those crossers instead, I'm good with it.
It was like a halfway, kind of like dipping a toe in the water. It was like halfway there from whatever the hell he had him running last week, like running 30 yards up the field. Now he brought him back into like the curl route, the drag route range. So maybe, just maybe next week you'll see him on like the true classic Mike Thomas slant. But I'll say this, I mean, he was situation, he's your best. I think he's your best wide receiver on the field. He's got time to come back. He needs a recovery and all that stuff, but like he knows the soft spots in his zone better than anybody else you're going to have on the field. When you need a first down, that should be your primary target, and he proved it on Sunday.
Yeah,
I think
I agree. So Corey, one thing Max and I were kind of going back and forth on: Carr's performance through 5 games. Max thinks it's a bottom 10. I think it's kind of where on the low end of where I think we all said we thought he was before the season. The main reason I say that is I feel his stats are a little deceiving. I think there were 4 touchdowns this year that if you're betting, you probably think we get 3 of them. The Olave deep ball last week, the Olave deep ball this week, the Olave at the front pylon when his foot was out of bounds, when it hit him right in both hands, and then the Shaheed play that we talked about would have been a very difficult play, but a very makeable play. His season could look very different right now. He could be sitting on 8 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He's at 4-2. He's at, I think, almost 66% completion.
Yeah,
almost 200 yards a game, missing half a game. Where do you feel he's at, considering first 5 games at a new team, new offense, new
hold
coach,
on one second, Corey. Corey, before you answer, though, let me throw in these little conditional things as well. What if the typical?
Let me get my pen here.
The typical bad pass that this week he threw it in the third quarter. Instead of in the second quarter this week, he threw it in the third quarter. Hold on.
These things I need to remember.
No. I'm saying, what if these go the other way? Like we're saying, what if Olave holds on to him? What if the defensive back holds on to the one this week? There was a one that was dropped the previous week, so that changes shit as well. So
well, this week was a bad throw. I don't know if it was an easy catch for an INT.
It's not easy, but I mean, the Olave one this week, the Olave one this week should have been caught. There was one. The one
from the Titans game should not have been. That was the chokehold.
Yeah, that one.
Nick
I'm not talking about that one. That's not one. I'm not counting that one at all. That wasn't in the end zone. I'm talking about the one last week where Antoine Winfield Jr. stuck his arm out and he didn't get his hands extended and he let the ball come in.
Carr just waited too long to throw that ball. I mean, he threw that ball 65 yards in the air.
My point is, though, I'm throwing out there's 2 or 3 possible interceptions that didn't become interceptions, as well as the 2 or 3 touchdowns that could have been touchdowns.
That's
so
a good point.
You got to look at those as well.
Because I'll say this first. I mean, in terms of statistics, like what y'all are talking about on a fine point, it's funny having a QB that's like on either side, 1 or 2 plays away from being in a different category, like a different tier of passer. Because with Brees, because I'm not really going to put in any of the guys from the past 2 years, but like, Brees was good, but he it was a death of 1,000 paper cuts for the other team. Where he would end up with like 4,500 to 5,000 yards. But and yeah, he had his chunk plays in the game, but he was just so consistent that you were never like, it was rare to ever be like, oh damn, Brees was like one play away from, instead of having 180, having like 250 yards passing. It was always just, his game, the largest chunk play Brees ever had being like 30, 40 yards for the most part. He was always within that bubble, and that bubble was a very high yardage. So we're never like, there was never any what if with Brees. So it's interesting having a what if moment with our quarterback here, because you're right, Nick, that there's a few games where like, if he's got one of those completions in like 2 of the games, he's probably up, or let's call it 3, like 3 out of the 5. He's probably up. Yeah. He's into like a different category of statistics. But to Max's credit too, it's not just statistical. I mean, if you have a bad turnover in those situations, that could be the difference between a win and a loss. But bottom line for me, though, it's too early in the season for me to judge a QB based on statistics. It's that point in the year. I know we're 5 games in, but like, it is that point in the year where you're like, he's on pace to throw for 15,000 yards this year.
Exactly.
Or CJ Stroud is on pace to have a better season than when so-and-so won the MVP. It's like, everybody's on pace, on paper, all that bullshit. But for me, it's the eye test, and it's tough because.
Well, that's what I'm asking. Exactly that. Because stats don't matter.
See the stats,
it's eye test. Just give us an answer on the eye test.
Right. Where do you feel he is at compared to your expectations? I only say that because I think all 3 of our expectations overall were about the same.
He's below expectations, but with flashes of what we signed him for. Because like the end of the Tennessee game,
that's a flash. That's a huge flash.
The leadership. Like when he's flashed real bright, like really bright. Like, okay, this might just be something we have here. But, and he even said in his press conferences, Derek Carr did, like, it's consistency. What we're trying to do as a team right now is be consistent. They said it through training camp. It's like stacking. They use this term stacking wins and stuff like that. And it hasn't been consistent yet. So like, again, I'm going to relish the Saints victory just as much as the next guy, but we do have to see what we're going to do on the heels of it.
Yeah, and let me say this. So there was a similar situation last season where the offense was being questioned because the offense was trash, and we rolled into the Raiders game. Sean Payton was in town that week, and they made a big deal about him, stopping over at Saints camp and all of that. The offense comes out. Look at that, a shutout, 28-0 over the Derek Carr-led Raiders. Yep. And everybody's like, all right, cool. Maybe we turned the corner. It was right around the trade deadline. I think this is where Adam and Ryan were talking about offers were coming in for Davenport, and they were considering it. And then all of a sudden they're like, you know what? No, look, we're about to go on a run. We just won 28-0. We turned it around. We're looking good. And they followed it up the next week with a huge steaming pile of shit. So this week we played one of the 5 worst teams in the league. I'm not at all convinced the offense is fixed. Did they look better? Yes. Was it, was it water to someone who's been in the desert for fucking 2 weeks? Absolutely. But, are the problems fixed? I don't know. Or,
I think it was kind of like a charging station for Nick's Porsche.
Exactly. But the reality is none of us know. It's just if this is a 1 week aberration or is this the beginning of a run.
It was a perfect game for the situation of the game. They couldn't have played that out any better.
Yeah, but they did it last week.
Dominant.
I mean, not last year, last year. Same shit. They,
Well,
oh no, I get it.
I think let me say this about last year. I saw that last year. I think it's distinguishable on so many different levels. If that's what you're about to say, Nick, then go ahead. But
why is it totally different?
I do too.
Well, because last year, like you just said, we're at the trade deadline. Okay, being at the trade deadline is 100%.
That should have nothing to do with their performance on the field.
What are you talking about? It's like week 11. the weeks you play have everything to do with
okay,
your
but they
performance
were
on the field.
crap before. They had one bright spot in a sea of shit.
But okay, do you think crap over 4 games is the same as crap over 10 games?
No, but it's trending in the same direction.
Double the crap.
And to be honest, I mean, let's say Derek Carr threw for 183 yards this week. Like, we ran for what, about 100
Yeah, no, he wasn't like on the scoreboard.
Like, that's not a
He also threw a perfect dime for a 50-yard touchdown that was dropped.
But that happens in every game where someone's going to drop a pass.
This is completely different.
I hope it's completely different
on a few levels.
I don't know it is.
Well,
I only say that because it's a brand new quarterback who's a much better, exactly what Corey's saying, much better personnel. Everyone's healthy. A brand new quarterback, 5th game in the system. He missed half of game that cost us a game. I think it's different than when you knew what Andy Dalton was. You're 10 games in, like much more chance of an anomaly being in that situation than this. Like we're trying not to give any time for growth with the new system with Derek Carr. And he's a veteran. I get it. He should come in and this shit, should just make sense to him and all that. A lot of the times it just doesn't work that way. So I think it's unfair to say through 5 games that it's the same situation as that last year.
No, time out. I'm not saying it's the same situation. I'm just saying it's a very similar situation. And I don't know that it's completely different. I hope it is. I hope both of you are right. And I hope I'm completely wrong. I hope they come out this week and put up 38 points on the Titans or the Texans.
Here's what I think. I don't this isn't a knock on you specifically, Max. It's a media like look at this, look at that, like clickbait, coincidence.
This has nothing to do with the media. This has to do with what my own eyes tell me.
No. Okay, well that's fair, but I think the only thing that's the biggest similarity is the amount of points that both teams.
No, let me rephrase what I said.
Other than that,
offense facing scrutiny from media and fans. Forget what week it was. Offense facing scrutiny from media and fans for previous couple of weeks. Hold on.
Yeah.
For previous couple of weeks, offensive performances. Okay, check. Team comes out motivated, puts up 28 plus points in each game, shuts out the opposing team, a bad team in each situation. Check. Follows it up with to be determined in this case. Now, last year they followed it up not very well. This year, hopefully they change it and take advantage of the personnel, the better quarterback, the better wide receivers, the better everything in theory. But let's see.
But that's a big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what Nick and I are doing with the thing that Nick and I are doing to you what you and Nick usually do to me.
That's fine
on this podcast.
Look, I hope I'm wrong. I mean, I hope I'm wrong. Funny. I really do. But
where you're saying like A,
I'm
B,
saying
and C,
my standards are so fucking low at this point from watching a Pete Carmichael led offense.
Yeah, I'm trying to help you out.
You're not going to help me. I don't need you to help me. I'm just telling you what I see.
Oh no, you're big. You're a big tough guy.
Your points. I usually argue against, so I really don't need you arguing on my side, counselor.
I think Max.
Sure.
Everyone agrees. I think all 3 of us know what we've seen is not good enough. I think what the setup this year is far better than it was. What you're comparing it to.
Absolutely. But this is where I'm going back to. Yeah, I don't trust the coaches over the long haul. Now, if Kamara is going to continue to roll with this newfound leadership role that he has embraced this offseason, look, maybe him going through the court trial, all that shit with the being an asshole and punching that dude and doing all that stuff. You know what? Maybe that is finally the maturity level kicker that he needed. Because by all accounts, Kamara has always been a little more off to the side, too cool for school type. And now you're seeing him, he's morphed, at least over the last couple of weeks, last week, I should say, has morphed into more of a vocal leader that we have not had on this offense since Brees has been here. So now, Kamara has stepped up his game, and look, his actions on the field in the last 2 weeks have backed it up. I know his average per carry wasn't great this week, but there's a noticeable difference, and Nick and I talked about this earlier today. There's a noticeable difference when Kamara touches the ball than when Kendre Miller and Tony Jones touch the ball.
Oh, yeah. I said it in one of our texts, or maybe I tweeted it out, that Kamara just looked like he was running angry. And you see him run smooth and fluid and solid and fast and all that stuff, but I've never seen him actually I mean, he's had great angry runs and he's run over guys like Kuechly and stuff in the past, but like there was a 3rd and 7 or something, or 2nd and long. He got a first down. He had like 8 yards downhill of steam sometime in the 3rd quarter. And the way he finished off the run was like someone just killed his dog.
There were one or two
something.
plays where we were all like, that's the Kamara alien shit that we've seen in the past.
Yeah, well, the one where his foot was hanging over the boundary and he still twisted back in. It was a pop pass and that's the difference between, not saying the Bucs or anything, whatever, but they have a decent defense. But like we threw the same pop passes against the Bucs and they just sniffed it out and tackled us. The same exact pass against the Patriots, and maybe Carr and AK worked on it a little bit more in practice this week. I mean, hell, this was only their 2nd week of regular season practice together. Something
I just think that's
that. But you know, like it was the same pop pass, and he actually.
Yeah, but you know what though? I don't think that's more. I don't think that's a product of the defense they're playing. I think that's more a product of AK just being like, I am not going to be tackled on this play, and he did one of those just freakishly, crazy plays that he is known to do, like the Kuechly one, where Kuechly has gone on record. And
I hope you're right about that because
there's no way that guy, there's no way he scores on that play, and we all know the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, because it's a control what you can control situation. Like we can't control what the other defense is, how well they're going to play, but Alvin Kamara can control how well Alvin Kamara can play. So I like your scenario.
Yeah, but I guess my original point is that we're seeing this year Kamara step up in more of a leadership role. And I know Nick's answer and everyone in the text is always like, punch somebody, prison this, prison that. But it's like Kamara's stepping up. He's talking the talk and he's walking the walk as well.
I'm all for him stepping up. My point was calling people out after you're 1 game back from a suspension is a little much.
I don't mind it. I don't mind. Somebody else to do it on that team.
Yeah, but like if anyone can call anybody out on this team, it's fucking Alvin. He's like 1 game back of suspension. He said
it's hard though when you just sabotage the team partially from stupidity.
Yeah, but none of those guys have an issue with that. They all know that's the guy. Like him and Mike Thomas are the guys on offense. Like there's the one thing I'll say is it's been 2 years since we've seen him not sprint for out of bounds, and it's very refreshing to see him try and finish runs this year and put his, get his pad level low and try and get those extra couple yards, because the last 2 years, Max and I talked about this extensively. It seems like he's just looking to avoid contact. And
he was
I think he's kind of he's had his moments where he's gone through the motions, as Chris Olave did last week. You know what I mean? And it's like we've given AK all kinds of shit, but it's the same thing as like me giving Zion shit when we're going through text messages about, he needs to do this, he needs to do that. And you'll say, well, he's young, he's going to get it. He's getting it. And the reality is you're right in that respect, in that, he just turned 23 and it looks like the maturity's kicking in for him. AK, he's 27, 28. Maybe this arrest was the fucking catalyst that he needed to open his eyes and be like, you know what? Fuck, I got to focus on this. I got to be doing what I'm going to do. I got to take care of my business. And some of these guys, it takes longer than the other ones, and Olave, like, it's only fair that we give him the same treatment when we're talking about him loafing and taking plays off last week. And to his credit, I said this on the last pod, to his credit, Olave came out and said, I had friends of mine call me out for doing that shit. I can't be doing it. So some of these guys figure it out sooner than the other ones. Maybe AK's that guy that, hey, look, he's 28 and now he sees himself he looks around the room and he's like, you know what? There's no Brees here anymore. And Sean Payton's gone on record saying that aside from Brees, AK's the smartest player he's ever coached. So he sees the shit on offense, that these other guys aren't seeing, and they're looking around and no one's stepping up. And AK's the guy that says, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to be the alpha in the room. I'm going to step up. Mike's game's always been more go out and show it as opposed to talking, but you're seeing these guys talk a little bit more. So maybe it's a great sign if it is that, and they're both stepping up into the leadership roles. And we all just assumed that this was probably their last year with us. I don't see any way you can not have them on the team next year, because there is Carr, vocal leadership. He's saying the right things, but fuck, you got to perform at some point, like really perform. And Mike Thomas, when he plays, pretty much always performs, as we talk about. AK, for the most part, there's been a few lapses here and there where he might have been going through the motions, but this year he's brought it. Both games this year, he's run hard as hell. He's made some good plays, and I think it's a really good sign that he stepped up in a vocal leadership role, and he's leading by example as well. So
I think you can question a lot of things about Carr. I don't think
I'm not questioning his leadership. I'm just saying he has to perform on the field to back it up.
Yeah,
he's got
execution.
Be better, yeah.
He's got to execute better.
This week was great, I think, and I agree. He hasn't been statistically, especially what we thought we were getting. But again, I keep going back to that pod right before we started the season, and we all said, every one of us said this was minimum 3 to 4 weeks before we see what we have offensively. I still think we need to wait a few more weeks before we think we can't be an offensive team. I don't think we got a lot out of this game on the offense. I agree with Max. I don't think we learned anything from our offense. It's an offense that finished in the red zone this week. It's the first time we finished in the red zone, so the points went up. Yeah. But it wasn't we had 3 plays over 20 yards and one was a screen pass. I mean, this was not a, great offensive performance.
There was a lot of meat left on the bone.
Yeah. We didn't light up the scoreboard, but I think, because I kept going back through it in my head, I think we at least learned that
they won't quit.
Exactly. And we learned things on a more 30,000 foot level than, we didn't learn that Kendre Miller can run really fast. We didn't learn that. By the way. Foster Moreau, he can, but
no, he can't.
We've already learned that. But I think we learned that, in my opinion, that they were willing to change it up, even if it's only on a few drives, not every drive of the game, not every play of the game. We learned that Carmichael, and we talked about this in our text too, it's not just him. I mean, yes, he's the guy, the buck stops with him on the offense, but you're talking about an NFL team, that has so many people on the payroll besides one singular guy at the tip of the iceberg. So I saw some changes. I was willing to, like I said, dip our toe in the water with a couple of exotic plays, like a shuffle pass. Sure, they were mixed in with run, pass drives in between, but there was at least a willingness to try the other stuff. I think we learned that about this particular team, because last year I didn't see a team, and we're going to talk about it ad nauseum, but I didn't see a team that even tried to do the other stuff. It's I know you didn't have the personnel last year. I know you weren't trusting of your guys, but there wasn't even an attempt to do it differently. At least what I learned in this game is that there was an attempt to at least give it a shot. And maybe we saw some things that worked, saw some things that didn't work. And so we can kind of, parse out what we can carry forward into games against maybe better opponents.
Yep. But I would say, I agree. And what we learned most is that there's a lot of players on this team that aren't okay with those last 2 games. Yeah. There were a lot of players that gave a shit this week. Yep. You saw it. You saw Cam's performance jump up, Granderson's jump up, Mike Thomas jump up. Kamara was the same as last week. He was playing inspired. There were a ton of players on the field that just said, we're not good with that bullshit that you've seen in the last couple of weeks, because we're not okay with it.
Didn't AK even say that in his press conference? He's like, we got too many damn good people on this team to
be this shitty.
I mean, he also said, I'm not a loser, and we're not going to play losing football.
Yeah, and one of them, Mike Thomas, I think it was earlier before the game, don't get used to this. This is unacceptable. And some people might say, oh, talk the talk, whatever. Talk is cheap. But here's the thing: in the NFL, when guys really don't give a shit, when guys are really checked out, they're not saying it on that level. They might be given the answers they know they have to give. I don't know, Pete Carmichael saying, I got to do a better job, or DA saying, yeah, we're working hard to get this fixed. Again. Not saying they're not, because it's different, but when you see players that are really checked out, they are not saying the stuff that our guys are saying. I believe them. I mean, obviously biased, but I like to hear.
Well, I believe the performances. I didn't, I'm not going to take anyone at their word on this team, the players. Could people say what they're supposed to say? I believe the performances, and you see it with Mike Thomas, and you see it with Kamara, and you see it with everybody else. Yeah. The guys that didn't say anything and just came out and played better.
Well, I believe that they gave a shit. I think that the NFL is one of these leagues where when the guys really don't give a shit, like they're not coming out there and saying stuff, in unison. Like our guys were.
Yeah, but most of them, you got to realize, just like what did Marshawn Lynch used to say, I'm only here so I don't get fined. Like those guys have to get – no, but
that's what I'm saying.
So 99% of them are going to get up there and give lip service no matter what. There's only like 2% that are going to be like, fuck this. Like I outwardly don't give a shit.
No, but that goes to my point. Like the guys that give a shit are going to get up there and talk about giving a shit.
No, you're missing the point. I said everybody has to get up there. No, everybody has to get up there and say that.
They don't have to say it in the way that our guys have said it. They have to get up there and say something. Yes.
Who did you hear from this week? You heard from Kamara and Michael Thomas. Who else did you hear from?
I'm more leaning with Max on this. This was the joke I was making about Tomlin this week about, we were talking and him saying there's going to be massive changes. Well, guess what? They came out with the same exact starting lineup. There was no massive changes. It's sometimes you just got to say shit in the press to not look stupid because they force you to talk to the press. I think when you see them come out and their passion's there and clearly the play showed that they care, then that really means something.
Well, it was nice to see you. Well, that's where we overlap. It was corroborated by.
There you go. That's better. Right. What you originally said was not correct because literally 98% of the NFL is going to get up in front of a podium and just spout out the same cliches that everybody else says because they have to or they're getting fined. There's only 2% of the people who will outwardly be like, you know what? I don't give a fuck and just walk off the stage and not say anything.
You see, I'll leave it at this because we could go all night. I think our guys did the 2% in the other direction. Their answers weren't particularly cliche. I didn't think. And they were in the positive, like, just watch me on Sunday kind of direction. They didn't just say, better, play better next week. And, as a team, it's
but that's because we won.
Yeah. The only one who didn't fall into cliches was Alvin Kamara. Cam gave his same usual, and we love Cam Jordan, but he gave his same usual 24-hour rule, get back to watching film the next day after the fucking embarrassing loss the week before. That's just shit that happens every week whenever we lose. AK's the only one who got up there and said, you know what?
Anyway,
this is loser shit. I'm not a loser. And Mike Thomas said, we're not getting used to this crap. Those are the two. Those are the only two that got up and said it that way.
That's what I'm talking about.
No. You made it. The whole group did this. They were the only two.
No, I didn't say the whole team.
You didn't say the whole team, but they were literally the only two. So, and they backed it up.
Yeah, no, but I like even seeing two of them. But anyway, this point's not worth going on for that long about.
It worked. Whatever happened worked. Yeah. Let's just be honest. That was as dominant a performance as any of us could have hoped for.
I'm glad we brought this up because I meant to bring it up in the beginning. But you know what I really think made the difference on Sunday? And it came about a little bit before 10 a.m. on Sunday. And that was when we posted Coach John O'Barnes' pregame speech to Twitter. And I think the team played it in the locker room. They were clearly amped by our last guest appearance on the podcast. So I think that's what did it. Some might say maybe not, but my point is we didn't mention Jono yet, but that was got to thank him again for coming on.
Well, if we got to do 3 pods a week to keep winning, I'm for it.
Same.
I was about to say.
I'll listen to all Corey's bad dad jokes. With him after, all we have to do just to get the wins, we can do it.
But no, I don't. I'm confused. I don't have any bad dad jokes. They're just dad jokes.
Perfect dad jokes.
Bad jokes. I guess I'll take the dad.
I mean,
I'll take the dad part out of it. They're just bad jokes.
That you didn't take.
You stumbling over there?
You upset him.
Apparently, I did.
No, you just changed the word. There's no dad joke that's a bad joke. Come on.
All right, this has been the best week of the year, though. So let's be honest. That was the best game. It was relaxing. We had it, controlled kind of from the jump, and we just got to watch us pummel them for 4 quarters. It was awesome.
Yeah, I could care less that it was a bad team.
No, and that's the best point. That's the best
that.
point of this. It doesn't matter who it was. It's a great win. Just take it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and you beat a bad team badly. That's what you're supposed to do against a bad team. If it was a 1 point, then maybe that's
I think it was, what we say when we were texting, the biggest home shutout loss in the history of the Patriots. So that's, don't take it lightly.
And there's also, I think Lance Moore tweeted it, where it's like, people just need to learn, accept the win. It doesn't matter who it's against. And Corey, you just touched on it. Take it for what it is. It was a dominant win. It doesn't matter who it was. It's the NFL. They're all paid professionals. You're not playing high school teams.
And they're all good.
You know what I mean? It's like they're all professional players. So it's whenever you can shut out a professional team 34-0, that's a monumental achievement, no matter how bad said team is.
And I had this thought too. For all the, and I'm gonna go crazy and actually put myself in the shoes of P. Carmichael. I know it's getting lit.
No impersonations.
But let's just say, let's just say he actually reads the papers and he is like, shit, I've really kind of fucked this up. What better way to turn it around if you're him than against Bill Belichick? I mean, I know he's not the same Bill Belichick and he doesn't have the right players, and he certainly doesn't have, as everybody knows, Tom Brady. But, one of the most storied defensive coaches in NFL history, and this is your 1 week. Because if Carmichael came out and laid an egg, it could have been curtains, or at least it could have been the beginning of really actually being curtains for him. And so if you're him, and I'm not saying that he's my guy, he's not, but silver lining for something on his end, which people don't really talk about that much, is you had to get it and you got it against Belichick. I think that's something he can hang his hat on.
We talked about this in the last pod. We stopped him from getting his 300 win, and we're notorious for going on record as the team that gave up something. So
the thing that was not on my bingo card was thinking, there's a record to be had, a significant record to be had by another team, and that the history made would not be the 300th win, but would be the largest margin of defeat in Patriots history in Boston.
I have a feeling Bill's going to be chasing that 300 win for a while after watching them this week.
Yeah. Do you think he gets the record? That's a good question.
Man. I'm going to go ahead and stroke your ego on this. No. There is a very strong argument based off of the last 2 to 3 years of Tom Brady made Bill Belichick everything he is, and Drew Brees made everything Sean Payton is. Because these two are two completely different coaches without those quarterbacks, judging off of the last, this year with Payton, granted the sample size, it's really small. So I guess 1 full season without Brees in New Orleans, and then 5 games this year. And then Belichick with what? Now this is his 4th year without Brady. And then you factor in the Cleveland years before Brady. Man, there is a huge fucking argument that those two quarterbacks made those two coaches.
Yeah, I would say argument, and if I was putting if I was walking into work and putting my lawyer hat on, I'd feel pretty damn good about that.
Yeah,
case.
In retrospect,
that's because that's
there's
exactly.
evidence. Like in hindsight, looking back at our predictions from last week, I'm like, Jesus Christ, I think we gave Bill entirely too much credit. He looks just like a broken old man at this point. Like that team did not look well. His strong suit's always been special teams and defense. Yeah. Like that's his calling card. He's a former special teams coordinator and he's a former defensive coordinator. The defense got pretty much rolled over by a questionable offense coming into the game. The special teams looked atrocious. That their punter was just shanking shit left and right. Lou Headley looked like Thomas Morstead across the field from that guy.
Well, it's tough to put it on Bill as a play caller because yes, Tom Brady's offense has helped out his defenses by time of possession, all that good shit. But his defenses were still pretty fucking stout. They were aided obviously by the second greatest quarterback of all time next to Brees. But it's but no, you're right. I mean, I think in his twilight, whatever version of Bill Belichick, I think you're right. I mean, we gave this version.
I'm inching my way towards the Bill Belichick. If he never has Tom Brady, that isn't close to 200 career wins right now, much less 300.
This is Max has heard
hard to argue against that
so many times from me, and it's when you have a quarterback that's that level, the Patrick Mahomes, the Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers. If you have them for a decade and you won one Super Bowl, you failed as a head coach, in my opinion.
Oh, that's a hard. I
agree with him. I agree with him.
No failure.
That's a fair statement.
Because it's such an impossible thing to find, Corey. It's so hard to find something that is every freaking game that dude's going to dominate, and it's the most important position. And look, we all love Sean, no doubt about it. But him, McCarthy in Green Bay, neither of them even made a second Super Bowl. And let's be honest, we got screwed out of one. We all know that. But I feel like if you came away with one in 15 years with Drew, that you probably didn't perform to the top of your ability. That he's too good to have only gone to one Super Bowl.
I agree with that, and it's the same thing with Rodgers.
Do you not see a difference?
It's the same thing with Rodgers. Like McCarthy failed to only have one title with Rodgers. Peyton failed to only have one title with Brees. You're looking at he's spot on with it. Like I watched the Packers game tonight, the whole game. And then this quarterback, this coach, I forget his name, the Packers coach, who has LaFleur, whose start to his coaching career is fantastic record-wise. And it's a direct correlation with him having Rodgers as his quarterback for, I think, 3 years of that. And you watch the Packers play right now, and it's a totally different team. I watched Jordan Love throw 3 bad interceptions tonight. Like it's criminal that this team beat us,
and that's 4 years in that system.
It's 4 years. It's embarrassing that our team blew a 17-point lead to this Packers team. I know, Corey. I know you didn't watch the game tonight. You were doing other stuff, but to watch this team, it is fucking shameful that we blew a 17-point lead to this team.
They scored 13 points on the Raiders, dude. They scored 13 on the Raiders.
I saw everything I had to know about how bad the Packers were against the Lions. I know the Lions are a lot better than the Raiders, but it's just tough. Look, and this doesn't move the needle for Saints talk, but hey, we're here. I don't know that
it's context for Saints talk though, because
we're talking about how we failed Brees. Fine. Brees, one title is a failure. To Nick's point, it's an absolute failure.
No, you can't say no.
Corey, we will never see another quarterback like Brees. Never.
Okay, but
in New Orleans,
the word failure.
It's a failure.
Failure is.
No, it is absolutely a failure. 15 years is a failure. Look, he should have at least 2, probably 3.
Did we win a Super Bowl? Are we Super Bowl champions? Well, can we say that?
No, that's 15 years ago. We're not Super Bowl champions anymore.
But you don't want to say yes because you know that's not. If you win a Super Bowl go ask Dan Marino if he thinks that Brees' time with the Saints was a failure.
But it wasn't one coach, one system for 15 years, Corey. I think
you have to look at
that.
But it's fine if you said it, Nick. You said not playing at the top. It's not at the top of your ability. It's not, it's absolutely underachieving. But
I mean, you would be hard pressed to find a Saints fan that has watched the Sean Payton era and say we didn't fail Brees in some level, whether it was just historically bad defenses.
But see. My problem with using the word failure is that we love as fans to throw around hyperbole like it's
that's not hyperbole though.
Okay,
discount cards. It is hyperbole.
You had a top 10 quarterback of all time. You got 1 Super Bowl. That's a failure for a decade 15 years.
But I mean, I don't think it's.
Look, we're not going to call it complete
Obviously,
failure.
It's not a complete failure, but it's also we failed him.
Well, what other kind of failure is there? I mean, are you pregnant? Are you more pregnant?
No,
are you more dead?
No,
failure is failure.
You failed him.
He didn't fail. He won a Super Bowl.
That dude.
The Saints did not do their job for Drew Brees.
And I agree with him.
I'm trying to say.
Okay, so they didn't do their job for every year except for the year he won a Super Bowl?
No, he's not saying that, Corey.
Listen,
I mean, what are you talking about?
What you're seeing as Sean Payton as head coach, what you're seeing right now, Corey,
they underachieved, but it's hard in the NFL.
He has zero regard for defense. Okay, 0. He did his whole time here. So it cost Drew Brees 5 years of his absolute prime because he just didn't care. He never gave Brees receivers. He chose to spend money in other places. One was very smart, offensive line. You talked about how good those offensive lines were in the Super Bowl year. I agree 100%. But he never spent money on skill positions. Defense was an afterthought. And that's why we don't have more Super Bowls.
So
that's a head coach's
the only year we didn't fail him was 2018, the fucking no call. The league failed us.
Correct.
So do y'all have any other grades between A and F?
No, we do.
That's why I said it's not complete failure, but Drew Brees deserved to be in more Super Bowls and played well enough to be in 4 or 5 Super Bowls. Corey. I believe that.
So what is the difference between failure and complete failure?
We just laid it out for you.
No Super Bowls is complete failure.
There you go.
0 Super Bowls is complete failure.
Okay, so Falcons equals complete failure.
Let me ask you this.
On that. So
how many quarterbacks? Here's a good way to phrase it, Corey. How many quarterbacks better than Drew Brees went to less Super Bowls than Drew Brees?
And that is a good question. I think Dolphins fans would say Marino,
and I think that's fair to at least put in the conversation. I don't think his circumstances were as good as Brees, having the same coach for 15 years, so you can kind of pin it a little bit more on Peyton. But I agree that's in the conversation. But who else?
There's a lot of people. There's a lot of truthers about Phillip Rivers during at least his prime.
Not close.
I don't think he's close. I don't think he's close to Brees personally.
Just skip to the next person.
I think of anybody who
skip to the next person. We don't need to debate Rivers.
Yeah.
We're talking first ballot Hall of Famer level quarterback play. Who's been to less Super Bowls? Okay, Marino, I'm giving you. He was first ballot Hall of Fame. I'm not arguing that. That's at least a case that can be made.
Marino's probably the one.
It's a tough pull. It's a tough pull.
Yeah,
Marino's the one.
So I think I'm not pinning it all on Peyton. Don't get me wrong. I'm not.
But I think we're arguing semantics really, because I don't like the word failure in those situations. I think it's hyperbole. Y'all don't. We've established.
I just think it's unfortunate for Brees' legacy because he was a better player than he will be remembered in the full NFL circle. In New Orleans, he will always be remembered.
If Brees makes it to if Brees makes it to 3 Super Bowls, there's a valid argument that he is in the top 5, no question, quarterbacks ever. Like, think if he wins 2 and goes to 3 total. You're talking about Brees, and he's second in every record, if not first, depending on what Brady overtook. You're talking at that point, Brees is probably 2, 3, 4 in the QB rankings. And then as of right now, as it stands with just the records, he's Dan Marino with 1 Super Bowl.
Well, not saying he was.
It has nothing to do with talent, Corey. Nothing. This has to do with statistical output and winning games. So if the narrative changes, if he wins another Super Bowl or if he makes it to 3 or 4 total.
I think the narrative changes if he wins another one. If he just makes it to other ones, there's guys who have followed that pathway like Jim Kelly.
Kurt Warner. There's a few.
And not saying that Jim Kelly's not a good quarterback, but like no one's being like, oh man, the NFL just wasn't the same after Jim Kelly. He just really sent a shockwave through the league. I mean he went to
4, and he's a Hall of Fame quarterback.
Yeah. No, he's great. He's
if you're 4 straight Super Bowls. That is the most insane statistic I can freaking think of right now. You make it to 4 straight.
But I don't think it. But do you put him in top 10 of all time QBs?
But the problem is Brees, who should be in the top 10 with no question, is not going to be in the top 10.
Listen, if you're in New Orleans, he's for sure a top 10 all time. In the NFL, if you go to random town, no one's putting him in the top 10 all time. And he is top 10 of all time.
Stafford's going to catch him on some of these records. And he has a Super Bowl win. So he's going to be – but you know what, though? He's still going to be looked at as his equal. By most people?
No.
When you look at the end result of the statistics and a Super Bowl, Stafford's going to be a small notch below Brees.
Look, he's going to have it. If the stat nerds want to go to whatever kind of websites they get.
I don't think you truly grasp how good his career is stats wise and what it is if he plays just until he's like, what was it, Nick? 38?
It's excellent, but Drew's is
Stafford.
Drew's
Look,
is
I love Stafford.
Yeah, you're not giving him enough credit.
Of course, I love Stafford. I threw a football with him on the beach at spring break. It was a random total meetup, and he was like, "Oh, is this an NFL football?"
All right. So anyway, so Nick, really drop the stats on him here.
Max hates when we talk about it.
No, Stafford's career, he won't catch Drew in any major stat, but he's going to be top 5 all time in yardage, and I think he'll probably finish top 7 in touchdowns all time.
Yeah.
Massive career. Drew, because we are a small market. Let's be honest. Drew will somewhat be forgotten about how great he was, in my opinion. Now, if he played in New York, I don't think that. I think he would be considered a top 10 all time if he played in New York or even Chicago or like just a bigger market.
It's the Joe Namath syndrome. If he plays in a giant market, he's going to be remembered better than he was.
He'll be elevated for no reason. Right. Drew Brees is absolutely a top 10 of all time type of player. Do I think he'll be remembered as that? No, only because of where he played. And I think if he made 2 more Super Bowls and maybe won one of those, I think that narrative would be different. That's all I'm saying.
1,000%.
Yep. Yeah, we're saying the same shit. Okay. Getting our bearings back here. We've gone a lot of places tonight. It's been fun. It's been a good topic. Good.
Well, it's a much happier week than last week. So I think.
Yeah. So we're now like an hour 10 into our 30-minute recap episode.
Going for a record.
Well, we went 2 hours and 15 minutes the other day, so whatever.
Yeah. So let's circle back. Okay, big win. Any other big takeaways from this week before we close it out?
Only other one I have is offensive line looked. Now, again, how good is the Patriots defense? Who knows? But the offensive line finally looked like a normal offensive line. So if that's what we have going forward, I think the offense has a chance to improve. Hopefully it's not just because it was the Patriots.
Yeah, for me, I'll say I'm cautiously pessimistic about this one because of who they were playing. I'm not there yet. Well, I think we definitely took some steps forward. I just want to see how big those steps actually are when I see us.
Do you think we can win like that the rest of the season? I think is the question. With a defense like that, obviously 0 is not going to happen. That's an anomaly. But let's say they're scoring 16. Do you think you feel better about the way we executed that we can get 20, 23 points a game and that defense can keep most teams in the teens and win a bunch of games?
If the guys that I touched on earlier, Adebo and Marshawn, stay healthy, then yes, I feel confident that the defense can hold most offenses in the league, not all of them, but I would say, 80% of the offenses in the league we can hold to in the teens. The question becomes, can we score above that?
That's what I'm asking. Do you think we can, playing like that on offense, meaning executing on third down, red zone, not being flashy, but can we, if we were to execute when we have our chances, I think we shake out as a mid-level playoff team still, like I think we all predicted, if we play like that. Now, can we reproduce that against better teams?
I don't think we can. I don't think we win a playoff game if we're just doing what we did last week. I think we need to be better than that. Better than beating up on this.
If you're going to beat the Niners or the Eagles, you better be.
Yeah, you're not coming 100%. Close to sniffing beating the Niners, the Eagles, hell, probably the Cowboys too. You know what I mean? Like you're not beating those teams with that effort. Are you going to?
Dak might throw us 4 though.
That's a good point, but
he's not going to like our defense. I can tell you that. But we're not going to like their defense.
We're really not going to like their defense.
We're getting a five piece.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm cautiously. I'm not there yet.
I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm not pessimistic. I'm going to go the other side of that. I think it looks like a 10-7 team like that, like this week. And then, you're an injury or 2 or some good luck away from winning a playoff game or 2. I think that's where I'm at still. They don't. They have a long way to go for me to think they can actually contend.
If they come out this week and C.J. Stroud has been lights out so far, as a rookie quarterback, hasn't thrown an interception yet. If they come out this week, you pressure him into an interception or two, which he hasn't done yet, and we actually move the ball again and score, let's say we score anywhere between like 24 and 28, then I will go into the following week's game against the Jaguars feeling a hell of a lot better than I do going into the game against the Texans this week. And that'll be when they kick me in the balls and get freaking embarrassed on national TV. But
it could be. It sets up for it. But I think there's a couple things he also said that kind of brought it into what I was going to say was my only other takeaway was that like I love seeing 34 zip. I love seeing us at least dip our feet in the water, trying to, even if we didn't do it the whole game, we tried a couple of things differently. But there were a lot of moments in this game where I just couldn't help but think like, yeah, we would not have gotten away with that against another team. And look, I mean, it's a good thing about that last game being the fifth one of our season. And, maybe some call it more difficult opponents or just other opponents at this point coming up later down the road. And I agree with Nick's assessment about, we have to kind of take our own medicine at some points. We said it, that it wasn't, look, we weren't going to come out of the gates week 1, week 2, week 3, maybe not even week 4, looking the way that we're supposed to look on offense. And I'm not saying we looked it in week 5. We didn't. But even seeing, put it this way, we saw signs of life. Not saying there was some like big, bold, beating heart of an offense, but we saw signs of what could be. Now I agree with, and now I want to go ahead and, to your credit, Max, that could all come crashing down if we did what we did last year, and follow up the shutout with a laying an egg.
Red zone offense is a huge thing for this team.
But I think we're set up. We're set up for success. That you want to talk about cliches? Like that's a cliche, but we are. I mean, we're set up to do it. Yeah, just gotta, again, like it's like the Saints fan scaries. Just you don't
Corey,
you don't ever.
We're just trying not to peak early.
You don't ever trust a fart, man. It's just
no, and that's the thing about the Niners. A lot of people have seen it a couple of times today, where everyone's like, "Look, the Niners are peaking early. They're gonna slow down by playoff time," and that's the worst thing. Like Nick said, you don't want to peak in the first 5 weeks.
Yeah, Brock Purdy's gonna throw some interceptions.
He's
it's gonna happen
right now.
He hasn't yet.
It's crazy.
Right. That's gonna stop. It's just the NFL's too good.
There's a lot of QBs who could be undefeated. And,
no, I mean over his 10 game, yeah. So you have to give him
it's
credit
impressive.
At this point.
Very,
you have to.
Very impressive.
I'm going to give him his credit. I'll give him his credit on that.
I'd kill to have Brock Purdy right now. I'd trade Derek Carr for him in a second.
Well, he's 24. I would too. All right, we got to wrap this up.
Keep moving. All right. Okay, so we're going to wrap it up. Our next one's going to come at you with our Saints-Texans preview as the Saints head into Houston, into H-Town. We'll have some friends there present at the game, which will be a lot of fun to keep up with those developments. But until next time, thanks again for listening to another episode of the 28-3 podcast.